Eloisa. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I'm going to be doing another historical romance guide for a specific author. For this video, I'm going to be doing Eloisa or Eloisa James. For some reason, I have the most difficult time pronouncing her name, and my friends do not waste their time on burning me and roasting me and ridiculing me for the way that I pronounce her name. And I always butcher it, and for some reason, there's just this two different pronunciations. There's a UK one and there's American one, so please forgive me. I know a lot of people in my comments tend to correct me with my pronunciation for things, and rightfully so. So like, for example, Viscount and Viscount, I pronounce it wrong, and then there's also a different pronunciation for Marquis and Marquess. So I'm sorry, but hopefully you guys are still enjoying the content nonetheless. So for this series that I'm reviewing is actually called the Fairy Tale series, and the Fairy Tale series, as you can tell, is that they are actually retellings of popular fairy tales. So the first one is a retelling of Cinderella. This one's called A Kiss at Midnight. The second one, which I do not have right now because I bought it and it's like coming my way, and I actually listened to all the audiobooks of this series, so I don't have all the physical books. It's actually called When Beauty Tamed the Beast, which is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. The third one is, I believe, The Duke is Mine, which is a Princess in the Pea retelling, and this one I do own a physical copy of, so I can show you the gorgeous step back of this one. And then the fourth one is The Ugly Duchess, which is obviously the Ugly Duckling retelling. And then the last one is actually called Once Upon a Tower, and this is a Rapunzel retelling, and I also have a step back for this one, which is quite gorgeous as well. So for this series, you can actually read as standalones. You don't have to read the series in order. It's a series of 5 books, so you can pick and choose whichever you want to start with. The characters have their own individual problems and have their own individual families. They don't really blend and bleed into each other. They are just set in the same setting, so definitely do not feel pressured. I went into the series not knowing I was going to actually film this video. What usually happens is that I read one book and then I start binge reading all of their books from the same author. So for this one, I actually picked up When Beauty Tamed the Beast first, and then I kind of pick and chose which books interested me afterwards, and then what do you know? I actually finished the whole series. So this video is actually gonna act as a guide video and also as a review video because I never reviewed these books before, and I'm also giving you kind of like a breakdown of like what is happening in the story and whether or not you should read it or not. This video may contain spoilers, so if this is a series that you want to read or there are some books that you haven't read in this series yet, definitely be aware that I might spoil something for you, so at least you know that you are prepared when you're walking into this video. So for the first book that I read in the series is actually book number 2. It's When Beauty Tamed the Beast. For me personally, I love Beauty and the Beast retellings. There's just something about that feeling of this like very beautiful woman who's basically, you know, has no choice but to go into this faraway land to go marry this beast of a man. And I'm more attracted to the beast character itself because the beast is usually wounded in some way, either emotionally or physically and mentally. And they have this personality where they don't care about the world, where they're very gruff. They don't believe in happiness anymore, but ultimately they do, and that they're actually a very soft person underneath all the hard exterior. So that's why I was attracted to this book. This book follows a woman who basically is beautiful. She is curvaceous. She is gorgeous. She is the beauty of the land. So what happens is that there was this mishap where she actually kissed a guy, and then people thought it was a scandal because obviously back in the historical romance ages, you're not supposed to be kissing strangers and you're not supposed to be unchaperoned. So there were rumors flying that she was actually pregnant with the prince's baby, and then now the prince actually doesn't want her, and then now she's just going to be bearing a child out of wedlock. And then there's all these rumors and slander that was going against her, to the point that her family and like her father and like people in charge were like, you need to go away, you need to hide away, there's just too much scandal surrounding you, we can't bear it. So they have this arrangement where she basically is pregnant and she's not a virgin anymore, and she goes off to marry this man who turns out to be our beast. So our beast is actually a very great doctor. given in mind that he's very realistic doctor. You know, he telling you straight out that, you know, you will pass away from all these like diseases and from all your ailments and from everything like that. And there are rumors surrounding him that he can't perform in bed and that he's not able to have a family. So, but he needs a family to carry out his estate and to carry out his family lineage. So they make an agreement where he is to marry her and that they'll be together. So it's kind of like an arranged marriage trope as well. So my thoughts and emotions for this book is that I absolutely love this book. This one was my favorite book of the whole entire series. And I'm so glad I started with this book, because if I didn't, then I wouldn't have the courage and the urge to read the other books in the series. This book, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I really liked the sexual tension between our two characters. And I really liked how our two characters were portrayed throughout the story. So our female heroine, you're going to get really annoyed with her, and it's not her fault, but you're going to get really annoyed and disgusted by the characters surrounding her. They blame her for her sexuality, like for her looks, for her body, for the reasonings of why people are talking about her, and they make all these assumptions about her that, you know, she's a harlot, she's a temptress, she deserves everything that she's getting in life because of her looks and of her beauty. And Eloisa James does like a great job at like describing how beautiful she is. She is like the ideal beauty with pale skin, you know, curvy body, curvy figure, light hair, and things like that. This whole story kind of follows the trope of also like Mr. Grumpy and also Miss Sunshine. She is always hoping to save the patients. She was always hoping to bring joy to the patients' lives in their final moments on Earth. And he is not having it because he just doesn't believe in that kind of bedside nursing and that bedside care, and he doesn't believe that there is a greater outcome than death. So this is the story of them learning from each other and living closely together and also having a relationship with each other. And I also really like the quick wit humor. I thought it was very funny when they had their witty banters. Obviously the sexual scenes, Eloisa James does a really great job at writing hot scenes. They're very hot throughout the books and throughout the series. Even if I didn't like the book, I loved the hot sensual scenes because she's very good at writing them. So this one, highly recommend, gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely go check it out. So the second book that I read from her in the series is actually book number 4. So I'm actually jumping all over the place now. I'm literally just picking out the fairy tales that I am interested in. And I read The Ugly Duchess. And this one has it in the title. Our female heroine is not following our traditional beauty standards. She is not, you know, beautiful. She is not curvaceous. She is not like everything that everybody wants to be, I guess. And so lots of people kind of pick on her, and lots of people make comments about her face and about her figure, and then it's gross. It's disgusting. Like this whole series is like so infatuated and so fixated on how the woman looks like and how they are portrayed that it's disgusting to read. But I think the whole point of it was that Eloisa is trying to exaggerate these and to make you feel these emotions so that you can feel that, you know, the people are actually villains. The ones that who judge others for how they look are villains in the story because they're gross. So The Ugly Duchess follows a duchess who is not that pretty, and she is actually best friends with this duke, or she's best friends with this man with noble status, right? But the problem is that he has a very low scum father who doesn't know how to properly father at all or become a father, and he has gambled away his fortunes, leaving the estate to be very impoverished. There's not enough money to fund, and so our main hero needs to marry to someone who's rich so that he can take proper care of the estate and to also take care of like his life and everyone else in it. And then so they kind of like devise a plan where he's going to meet girls, and then she is devising a plan to meet guys because she wants to get married and she wants to start a family and things like that. And somewhere happens along the way where they actually get together, and it happens pretty quickly. So what happens with Eloisa James novels that I find is that books tend to either happen very quickly in the very beginning where they get together, you know, they love each other, and then there's this giant separation that happens where you're just like, what is happening? Why are these two people not together at all? Why do I care about like when they're not together? And then they quickly get back together in the end of the book, which can leave you very frustrated. Or her books in the series would happen where they never see each other, they never met each other for like the first 30% of the book, and then they finally see each other, and then it's just a very slow burn romance, and then explodes or fizzles out in the end, which can also leave you frustrated. So this one kind of took on the path of it happened very quickly in the beginning, and then they had this very long break, and then they had this ending. And this is not a spoiler because in the synopsis, they actually tell you that they have this amazing proposal, they get together, but then something happens and then they are now separated, and now this one is kind of like a second chance romance. So they got together, they got married, they loved each other, or so they thought, because they only married each other for like 2 days, and they loved each other already because they had childhood emotions and things like that. But then something happened, and this big separation happened where I think it was around 7 years, and then they finally saw each other again, and then they were willing to get over their differences. So this book, I did not like it as much, and this one was the one that I ranted a lot to my friend Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers. I basically ranted to her about a lot of these books I was reading because unfortunately for her, she was the one that I was texting at the time, and I would just like text her like back and forth, like telling her about how stupid these books were. So another spoiler alert is that there was a lot of books that I didn't like in this series, and I will call it stupid because things were happening that didn't make sense, pacing wasn't happening correctly, and then also characters were just being stupid themselves. So this one, they had this whole break for 7 years where, you know, they never even bother to like try to connect with each other ever again, and she ran her own little business at home while he traveled the world as a pirate. He just turned into a pirate, and it was just so stupid. And then he comes back shockingly, and then she, in those 7 years, she's willing to like get over her grudge, and then when he returns, she's like putting in his hands, and they are together again. And I just thought that that was so weird. It was not what I wanted, and it was so boring for that giant chunk of time where they were not together because they were pining over each other, they were thinking about each other, but they weren't with each other. So I don't know. I don't really understand the story of it. So this one, unfortunately, I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read in the series is actually book 3 in the series. This one's called The Duke is Mine, and this one is a Princess and the Pea retelling. A retelling where I read where I think it's about a princess, and then she claims she is a princess and the prince thinks that she's not. So then like they stack like a mile high of like mattresses, and there's a pea, and then only a princess can, you know, sort out if that's if there's a pea underneath the mattresses, and then that's how they know if she's actually a princess or not. I don't know really how this kind of like were similar in a ways because they weren't. This one was a tricky one. This one was a very angsty one that I recommend if you like angst in your stories, but if you don't like angst or you just can't deal with complicated issues, then maybe skip this one. This one was a little bit tricky, and it was a little bit angsty for me to the point that I wasn't sure if I actually enjoyed it. This one involved 2 sisters already, so you already know it's tricky, and our oldest sister is our heroine. She is betrothed to a duke who has a learning disability because he was born where his umbilical cord, I think, was wrapped around his neck, and then he didn't have enough oxygen going to his brain when he was a baby, so he suffered a lot from it. And our little sister of our heroine is actually betrothed to our hero. So you know it's tricky when there's like kind of like a love triangle situation going on, and our hero is immediately attracted to our heroine, and our hero does not care for the little sister, but the little sister really wants to marry the betrothed because it's her duty, and she feels that she is worthy of his love and that she wants his love, because who doesn't want the love of their betrothed? Our main heroine has these emotional complexities to her where she doesn't feel that she is getting the future that she deserves, but she knows that she has to do it anyways because it's her duty to do it. Obviously, she is upset for the fact that she's attracted to her little sister's betrothed, but she's engaged to this man that she has no interest in because they're very different. She doesn't understand him, and he doesn't understand her. There's a lot of issues in this book that a lot of reviewers have actually pointed out on Goodreads. So if you do want to take a deeper dive into it, do so. Listen, there's a lot of scenes in this book that is kind of hard to stomach because our main heroine may not be the best character in this book. She is acting somewhat like a villain in this book because she openly makes fun of her betrothed and makes fun of his learning disabilities and also his age. He has a mental age of like a 12-year-old or something, but he's like a 20-year-old man, and he doesn't understand the logistics of like the bodies and like how they will work together and how the action will go together. There's a lot of scenes where she makes fun of him for that, and where she makes fun of him with her little sister, and it's hard to read sometimes. There's a lot of scenes where also cheating was involved. Eloisa James for this series has a lot of cheating, so if you guys do not like cheating, emotionally cheating, physically cheating, do not pick up this book or do not pick up the series, because there's a lot of borderline like areas where I just didn't appreciate it. In this one there was cheating. So our hero openly cheats on his fiance with our heroine, and they try to make excuses for each other and say that like, you know, this is just one time and then we're not going to do it again, we're not going to kiss again, and like whatever, and I'll tell my little sister. And then our heroine is like a villainess in this story, where she kind of like lies to her little sister and says that there's nothing between me and him, and really he was looking at me, I didn't realize he was looking at me. And our little sister is like, you can't fool me, I see everything, and you can't lie to me about this. And then it was just so cringe and so bad at a lot of moments in this story that I grew more and more frustrated. There's also a lot of parts in the story that was like very dry, and I just couldn't really get through it. So this one, unfortunately, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars for a very low rating. I think like if it was like a true rating, I'll give it a 2.5. But then towards the end, you can see that there's a lot of character development and there's this character arc and things like that happen. But I still say it's 2.5 out of 5 because in the end, it was chaotic, it was messy. There's a lot of parts where you're actually confused about like what actually happened, because like Eloisa James does this thing where she kind of like alludes to this idea, but you never really know if it's like confirmed that the idea is true. So definitely be forewarned when you walk into the story. So the next book that I read is actually book number 5 in the series. It's the last book. It's called Once Upon a Tower, and this one is the Rapunzel retelling. And this one, oh boy, this one was very... So this one is about a girl who is betrothed to this man who's actually Scottish. So if you guys like Scottish Highlander romances, then definitely go check it out, because he wears a kilt and he's very good looking, and a lot of girls love him for what's underneath the kilt. So these two people don't know anything about sexual intimacy and anything about what happens in the bedroom sometimes. Like they just know the mechanics of it, but they don't know how to pleasure each other and also how to pleasure themselves, basically. So this book kind of follows two characters who are arranged to be married together, and then they get married, and then when all things goes down, it just goes bad. So this book actually acted as these two characters getting to know each other and their bodies, and it actually could be like a sexual guide to themselves, because this book, the overall plot line was literally about how to please each other in the bedroom. And I thought that there would be more to this plot. So when I first read the first scene, I felt really bad, because I knew that, like, you know, when you're doing it for the first time, it can be very awkward, it can be painful, it can be like, you know, a clumsy affair. But it was to the point that I felt really bad for our heroine, who just grinned and bared it, lied to her husband, lied about the things that she wanted to do, and lied about everything. And it was to the point that she was causing herself a lot of emotional distress and also a lot of physical pain. And I didn't like the fact that she was lying, because she was lying to her husband, making him feel like he was pleasing her and loving her the way that she wanted to do, and then getting upset about it privately with her like stepmother / like her servants and things like that. And then she would like complain, and then she would like talk about it openly with them, but then not be comfortable enough to talk to her husband. And our husband, our hero, feels that there's always this missing piece that he's never getting from her. He always feels that he's not loving her completely, because she's not willing to give like the other side of her, and she only openly loves playing her cello. This book is also an actual like dedicated book to cello artists out there, to like cello players out there. You guys will love this book. This one focused way too much on the cello. It like she kept playing the cello. She was like infatuated with the cello. She loved the cello more than her husband. And it really annoyed me at a lot of parts because they just kept talking about this cello. And I was like, God, like, get over this cello. But going back to the part where I didn't like how she wasn't communicating, and then she was like shocked when her husband got angry at her because she's been lying this whole time, and that she has been inflating his ego while also making fun of him to everyone else behind his back. And it was like to the point where I was like, you know, both of you guys are wrong in this situation. But like also at the same time, I felt like that the more blame was to be put on our female heroine who wouldn't step up and speak up. But for historical romances, I feel like that there's this thing where, you know, back then girls didn't have the liberty to talk about it. So then they would just grin and bear it the whole entire time. But for pieces that were actually written in the early 2000s and the mid 2000s, I feel like you can change it for in a better light for readers who are more, you know, feminist, who are more empowered to take on, and then so that we can have a more updated piece of historical romance. So that's my fair take on that and how I feel about our main heroine who wasn't really openly talking about her body and then blaming others for it. And then also this book was super weird towards the end. I didn't like how the conflict resolution happened and how she just like locked her way in a tower. And I was like, oh my God. And then they had the biggest like miscommunication error where they just weren't talking with each other. And then that's how the conflict started, was because they literally didn't want to talk to each other at all. So this one, I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. I wouldn't recommend you to read this one. So the last book in the series that I read was actually the first book in the series, and it's called A Kiss at Midnight. And the reason why I read this one last, because my friend Jessica from Peace Love Books XO here on BookTube, I'm sure everybody knows her, she said she hated this book and she thought that this book was extremely weird and it was just not good at all. This one, I would have to say that I'm giving it a 2 out of 5 stars as well, because I just don't believe it. I just don't care for it. At this point, after reading so many Eloisa James books where a lot of things never happen and a lot of things don't happen and they take so long to happen, I just don't care for it anymore. I find myself really getting out of the story when I'm listening to the audiobook of it. This one's a Cinderella retelling. It's about a girl who had a father who passed away, and then she is turned into the servant in the house by the evil stepmother. She really just wants to take care of the estate because it's in her father's like legacy, and she just wants to honor her father. So she stays in the house to take care of it. And what happens is that her stepsister has this little mishap, and then I'm not going to spoil it. And then our heroine ends up needing to impersonate her so that she can go to the palace and go to the ball and then, you know, be known as attending the ball without this like little mishap happening. So our heroine looks nothing like her at all, but they devise a plan to like make her a wig and to like fill out her breasts so that her body is changed and her body is morphed. So people think that she is actually her stepsister at this ball. And then that's where she meets our prince. And our prince and her don't get along in the first bit. They clash. There's a little bit enemies to lovers, but you can also tell that they have a very strong attraction to each other and that you can quickly realize that they will be together for a very long time. What happens is that they actually have to go on this journey to this estate, and then during this journey is where they actually get to know each other more, and then they fall in love. But the entire time she's impersonating her stepsister, and she's wearing a ridiculous costume, and she's like pretending to be someone that she's not. This one was just a little bit too slow for me, because in the first bit of the book, like around like 20%, 30%, they never met each other, and then they finally do, and then they like quickly fall in love with each other, and then that was it. So I don't like this one. I don't care for it. And honestly, I don't know if you should pick up this book or not. So anyways, I'm going to conclude this video by saying that this series had a lot of hits and misses. It had a lot more misses than hits for me. If I were to give you a conclusion, obviously check out Beauty Tamed the Beast, because I thought that that one was done perfectly well. It had the right amount of pacing, it had the right characterization, and it had conflict resolution that I really enjoyed. And if you look at Goodreads, it's the one with the highest rating as well. So if you guys ever want to read the series and you guys don't want to waste your time, just read Beauty Tamed the Beast. Overall, what I can say with Eloisa James's writing is that it's always a hit or miss for me, and that there are times where our characters never meet each other for the first 30% of the book, which is way too long already because I need them together. There's a lot of scenes that happen in the stories that don't need to happen, that drags out the books for a lot longer. There's a lot of parts in the stories that they fixate a lot on that can be very dry and very boring, and that sometimes the story just seems like it's not going anywhere, and that or it might just all happen at once where you feel kind of like a whiplash from it, or there's just a lot of scenes that kind of fall into place that you would have never seen how they would fall. It doesn't make sense in the way how they move along sometimes, and it could leave you feeling a little bit annoyed / a little bit weirded out by how weird the events are falling into place, if that makes sense. But anyways, that is it for my guide to Eloisa James and my reviews for Eloisa James's series called the Fairy Tale series. Hopefully you guys like this video, and I know that I probably hurt a lot of people's feelings, but these are just my true emotions toward this series. But until next time, I'll see you guys again. Bye.